Hi everyone, my name is Dylan, and on behalf of Team Titan, I'll be walking you through the first part of our project on Ford Motor Company. Our focus is understanding barriers to Ford EV adoption. Ford has invested heavily in electric vehicles, but customers still aren't buying them at the levels the company wants. So in this project, we will look at why people hesitate to buy Ford EVs and what that means for Ford's strategy moving forward. Here's a quick overview of where we're going. First, I'll cover the business problem statement, what challenges Ford is facing and why it matters. Then we'll explain why we chose Ford and outline our main goals for the analysis. After that, we move into data modeling, then improving strategies for Ford EV adoption, and finally a conclusion that summarizes our key findings. So what exactly is the business problem we're trying to solve? Ford is facing several barriers that slow down EV adoption among its potential customers. Our project focuses on three main pieces. First, identifying why customers hesitate to purchase Ford EVs. Is it price, range anxiety, charging convenience, or brand perception? Second, analyzing how customers think about EVs overall. Things like charging accessibility, how easy it is to own and charge an EV where they live, and how affordable these vehicles feel compared to traditional gas cars. Third, developing strategies to address those barriers. The goal isn't just to describe the problem, but to point forward toward actions that could increase EV adoption, whether that's adjusting pricing, partnering to expand charging infrastructure, or better differentiating their EV lineup. With that context in mind, I will now hand it over to Jamie, where we explain why Ford is a particularly important and interesting company to study in this space.
Thank you, Dylan. Now I just want to explain why we choose Force as a company that we're gonna do analysis on. Um, Based on our market research, Force is the company that have the real-world emerging business challenges with a really strong industry visibility products such as Mustang Mach-E, F-150 Lightning, and E-Transit. That's also lead us to our main goal for this project, which is defining the problem that Ford is currently facing in terms of attracting the customer. Um, we in this project we use three kind of data to do our data modeling. Each of them plays a really important role in telling us what telling the data. So for the first one, IEA is the data that show the historical curve of EV adoption needs for forecasting. The AFDC show the connection between the EV adoptions to the charger growth. And the last one will be the Kango EV spec, which is showing the current price and the range landscape. First, I just want to talk about the first model that we do analyzing on. Based on the data and the graph that we're seeing right here, the industry is expanding rapidly while within 10 years, but the growth is not evenly distributed. China is currently the country that's expand the most because of the populations. The Europe would be the second in expanding steadily. And the rest of the world, including US, is growing slowly, but also really steadily. Um, this uneven growth still will shape the EV adoption and the market opportunity through 2030. Now I want to pass this to Giovanni to talk about our second model and the third models.
All right, so on model two, we have the price versus range plot, in which we can see a couple observations based on the analysis. First being a clear range of Ford vehicles in the 55 to $80,000 range and 380 to 480 kilometer range, making Ford vehicles fairly competitive, but not necessarily standouts among the competition. Another thing we can see is that as the price increases in these vehicles, so does the range in these models. Now moving on to Model 3, which is the feature importance for hesitation score, with the highest being price, fast charge, efficiency, and range, which would be important to consider. With this information, Ford should focus on improving affordability and charging convenience, which should have the most significant impact on Ford's potential customers. Lastly, we have a couple observations. This being that uh, the infrastructure for EVs in the US is fairly behind other first world markets, making it a much more competitive market. Second is that customers have key characteristics in mind when considering buying not only a gas vehicle, but in this instance, an EV vehicle. Lastly, we can see that Ford is fairly competitive, but does not necessarily stand out amongst the competition with any of their vehicles. Now moving over with Tannen.
Now we'll walk through our key recommendations for Ford moving forward. First, recommendation one. Ford is operating in a smaller, highly competitive market, which makes it harder to stand out. Because of this, our first recommendation is for Ford to further differentiate its product line. By clearly separating its electric vehicles from those of its competitors, whether through design, technology, or unique features, Ford can strengthen its position and appeal to a broader set of consumers. Second, our second recommendation is to achieve this differentiation, Ford must prioritize the factor that matters most to EV consumers: price, fast charging capability, efficiency, and driving range. These are the core metrics that drive EV purchasing decisions today. By focusing resources on improving these areas, Ford can create meaningful value and better compete against market leaders who are already excelling in these performance categories. And finally, our third recommendation is one of the biggest challenges Ford faces is the relatively unimpressive performance of some models at their current price points. This mismatch between cost and capability makes it difficult to compete. Our third recommendation is for Ford to improve vehicle performance, whether through powertrain optimization, battery enhancements, or smarter engineering, so that performance levels better aligns with the price consumers are paying. Addressing this gap is essential for Ford to remain competitive in the current EV landscape. In summary, Ford must differentiate its product lineup, prioritize the key factors that matter most to EV buyers, and improve performance relative to price. Together, these steps position Ford to compete more effectively and capture more market share in an increasingly crowded EV market. Now we want to talk about our ethical impact and the ethical impact the data has. So first, we have the bias in the data. In this data, it represents wealthy individuals and those who early adopted EV technology. With environmental justice and infrastructure placement, is it fair if the data pushes chargers to wealthier areas? If these wealthier individuals are the ones that have all this data supporting them, is it really fair if all of these electric vehicle charging stations are in their areas? And what effects does that have for the rest of the world? And lastly, because Ford is such an important company in the world, it's important that we represent and respect our customers' right to privacy. Thank you.